Morning, everyone. We're going to continue on today talking about the temple and the assembly of all the elements in building the house of the Lord. So where we've got to at the moment is just a brief understanding of the assignment of the Levites and the priests. But rather than just not posting anything, I'm just going to post the progress as I continue to study and learn. In the effort that it might help somebody else understand as well. It really is one of those things you need to dive into and look at. From the outset, you can read it, but until you start actually mapping it out, there are things that jump out. So things that I hadn't seen before and understood before. So it's an exercise that's worth the while, and it will contribute to the greater picture that we're going for. So I hope you enjoy. Here we go. All right, so yesterday we were talking about the parallels between the building of Solomon's temple and Jesus. One of the greatest ones was gathering resources that we pointed out, how he goes, one of the first steps is to gather the stones and to shape the stones for the foundations. And that's one of the first things Jesus does in his ministry, and is he goes looking for the disciples, the master builders, as Paul calls himself, a master builder. And what we then understand is that God's people are the resources. Okay, so we see these parallels throughout it. So we're continuing on with this now. So where we've got up to, I'll just work our way through and show you sort of where we're at the moment in our understanding. So David organizes the Levites. When David was old and full of days, he made Solomon his son king over Israel. David assembled all the leaders of Israel and the priests and the Levites. And he gathered together all the princes of Israel with the priests and the Levites. So this is in the KJV. See how the leaders are referred to as the princes of Israel with the priests and the Levites. Okay, so we learn that the priests and the Levites are the leaders of Israel. Okay, they're called the leaders. In the KJV, leaders are princes. So we can see that they're just referred to as the princes. We see there's 38,000 Levites that are listed. 24,000 will actually be the ones that have charge of the house of the Lord. Okay, so out of that, we see an additional, to make up 38,000 minus 24,000, we're left over with 6,000 officers and judges. It's a separate role. 4,000 gatekeepers and 4,000 musicians. Okay, and they're not counted in the same manner. They have a different count, if you will, but they're all made up of the Levites. So the Levites 30 years old and upward were numbered, and the total was 38,000 men. 24,000 of these, David said, shall have charge of the work in the house of the Lord. 6,000 shall be officers and judges, 4,000 gatekeepers, and 4,000 shall offer praises to the Lord with instruments that I have made for praise. And David organized them in divisions corresponding to the sons of Levi, Gershon, Korah, and Merari. So we have 38,000 divided into these three different family groups. Okay, and then we go through and we see the different sons. It lists them all out. And we see that basically what we start to understand is, and I'll go down here further, is we end up with 38,000 here, and we see this is more or less the family tree. But one thing that jumps out is with Aaron. Okay, Aaron's sons aren't listed. And this is in the group of the Levites, and the reason is because they're set apart. It says they're set apart to be priests. Okay, so they're actually set apart, and they're in the priestly section here. So we see the sons of Aaron. So we see the line of Moses. They're under the clan of Korah. However you say it, Korah, and or Koah, I think it's Koah, because they're the Kohathites, yeah, it's Koah. But basically we see Aaron and Moses come from this group, okay? But we see Aaron's sons were the ones set apart to be priests, and all of the inheritance of that. So that's why Aaron's sons aren't listed here. That's why they're in the priest section. Now, what we understand is that our Levites are like the big bucket, and out of the Levites, then you grab your priests. So not all Levites are priests, but all priests are Levites. Okay, so it might be a bit confusing. I just think of a bucket, and the biggest part of the bucket is the Levites, and then you take a small portion of them out of the Levites, and they become the priests. They have slightly differing roles. So we see here, we have a number of chiefs, and all located in different parts of these families. So there's heads of fathers' houses and chiefs, and so forth. The main roles of the Levites were to assist the sons of Aaron in the service of the house, to take care of the courts and chambers, cleansing of all things that were holy, like the vessels or anything holy that needed cleansing, to assist with the showbread, so the baking of the showbread, the preparation. We see that in the story of David when he goes looking for food and he asks for a sword. We see the priest is, the one that prepares the showbread. The flour for the grain offering, so they take care of that. The wafers of unleavened bread as well. The baked offering mixed with oil, all measures of quantity and size, so they're responsible for all these things. They're responsible every morning to stand and praise, and every evening. Okay, so they have to praise every morning and evening. They burnt offerings for the Sabbath, the new moons, and the feast days, and to keep charge of the tent of meeting and the sanctuary, to attend to the sons of Aaron, their brothers, in the service of the house. So the Levites, they'll attend to the service of the priests. Okay, they'll sit under the priests and they'll attend to their service, and their brothers, but they help them to attend to the service in the temple. Okay, so there's a slight difference there between them. We see David organizes the priests here, where he goes through the list. And then he breaks it down into 16 lots of families, and then 8 lots of families, which is a total of 24. Okay, so they're organized under this 24 heads of fathers' houses, so 24 leaders, or chiefs, if you will, or elders. It's interesting, we have 24 elders in the book of Revelation. We also have 24 elders here. So we start to see this other interesting thing happen when there's these 24 lots. This bit could slip you by, but basically the rest of these people that are listed here, the 24, it says they also casted lots. Okay, so they also casted lots as well. And so therefore they casted lots for their time in the temple as well. So what would happen is they would each have to spend a period of time in the temple in service to God. As far as I can understand it at the moment, it appears that they each did a week. They each did a week, and it seems to be twice a year, because, and I'll show why I believe that. But there really isn't enough information to go on. Like, you have to use other sources to get confirmation of that. But let's sort of go through and have a look at this first. So the genealogy of the priests. So when we map out this passage in 1 Chronicles 24, we get this. Okay, we see that the priests, so they come from the line of Aaron. Okay, so the Levites are the bigger bucket, and we see that Aaron comes from the Kohathites, or the family of the Kohathites. But his sons now, they stand in this priestly line. So the sons of Aaron are the priests. Okay, we see Nadab and Abihu, they died because they offered unauthorized fire or strange fire in the Bible. But then we see that Aaron had one son, so Eleazar here, and Itamar here. So that he had these 2 sons, well, he had 4 sons, but he had 2 left. And so most of the priests come from the line of Eleazar. Itamar, it's really hard. There's not really much on Itamar's. Apparently Itamar had 8 sons, but there's nothing in the Bible. All you can find out is, as far as I can find out, is Ahimelech and Abiathar, I think it's pronounced. are the other two sons mentioned in the Bible. But we see that Ahimelech had a role in helping to organize this schedule with Zadok, I believe. And so basically this is all a calendar, right? It's a roster system. And this roster system is showing when they had service in the house. So this is a big part of it. So a big part of their job, they had to come into the house of the Lord according to the procedure of what Aaron and God had commanded them. So the priests had a very specific duty of worshiping them and had to perform what they had to perform in the temple. So this made up the group of these priests. We see that Zadok, the priest, is in the list here. Okay. And then we get this lot. So these 24, here's all the lots. So the 24 different divisions, or the 24 different periods of time. Okay, so what we understand is that there's 24 divisions and there were 24,000 priests. So that means that there was 1,000 priests in each division. We'll just put that down here, so because I didn't put that down. So there's 1,000 priests per division. Okay, so there was 1,000 priests serving at any one time in the temple, and they were basically that's how they were. So as we understand it, then we get this second lot, which seems to reference the Levites, and what it says here is it says these also, the head of each father's house, cast lots just as their brothers, the sons of Aaron. So the Levites cast lots too, right? And then there's 24 of them as well. So what it appears is it could be twofold. One, it could be that these guys, they just serve at the same timings of these guys, and so there's just 24 divisions. Or it could be a hint that there's 48 divisions, and in the Hebrew year there were like 50 weeks. I think 50 or 51 weeks. So basically you end up with covering the entire year by having these divisions. But the Bible clearly says there's 24 divisions. So I'm assuming these guys, they just jump in at the same time as these guys. So they're helping the priests here. But what I think the Bible might be doing is giving us, you know, the list of the Levites that served at the same time as the priests, if that makes sense. So however you think that is, you know, that's how all I can deduce from what's given is there's two possible outcomes here. One is there's actually really 48 divisions, or the other, there's only 24 and these guys just work the same way as them. And so that makes total sense. And we'll go into that. We also see this reference here that in order to have all this going, that there appeared to be 8 standout leaders. Okay, so there were also these guys. So we see that we got, is it 8 or 7? Hang on, 1, 2, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, it's 8. So basically, David summons Zadok, Abiathar, Uriah, and then these are the 2 priests he summons. So he summons 2 priests and Levites, Uriel, Asaiah, Joel, Shemaiah, Eliel, and Aminadab. So and then he says they're the heads of the fathers' houses of the priests and the Levites. So basically there's 8 standout leaders out of all of these people that seem to be the ones that were really in charge of everything or helping out with everything. Why is this important? Well, when we apply a little bit of our understanding of the Hebrew calendar, we can learn something really interesting here. Okay, so when we start to look at the 12 months of the year on the Hebrew calendar, and we have the 24 divisions, we see that they're going to overlap and repeat twice. Okay, or they're going to, these people that are going to undertake the service, they're going to undertake service through these different lots of the year. Okay, so these lots are like, as I understand it, are like buckets. So for example, if there's 24 buckets, and then you have maybe, you know, those 1,000 priests, your name could just you could get called for, say, this one, and then get called for, say, for this one, and then you could get called for, say, this one. And they're your 2 weeks a year that you would have to do. In the purple, I've put the list of the Levites, but just ignore that and just focus on the 24 lots here. And with our knowledge of the Hebrew calendar, we understand that the year starts with the spring equinox, which is usually March 20 to 21. So we know when to start the calendar. Okay, what we can also see too is that when we count in the Hebrew days, okay, we know that the second month is 29 days in the Hebrew calendar. So we count 29 days from there. And if we continue to follow the Hebrew calendar, we actually get dates that we can mark to the start of the month. Now, the reason this is important is in the story of Luke, we're given a reference to Zechariah. He was serving in the division of Abijah, and he's serving in the temple at the time the angel comes and tells him that Elizabeth is going to be pregnant. So this actually gives us a timestamp for when we can start to track the birth of Jesus, the real birth of Jesus, and not the fake birth that everybody thinks is on Christmas Day. That's actually Nimrod's birthday. Okay, so Nimrod used to hack a tree down out of the forest and put presents under it, and he's also referenced to the reindeer as well. So I understand that's not Jesus' birthday, and we know that for a fact. So the thing is that Jesus' birthday, it's not, we're probably going to be able to get somewhere within a near enough thing of it, but it's still going to be a mystery, no matter how much you throw at it. So, but we should be able to, and other people have come up to their own conclusions on what month it is. But ultimately, that would require some extensive study and mapping out the rest of the story. Okay, so Elizabeth, the timings of that, the timings of Mary, so you have to do a specific study on that. So whatever the case, it's just important to note that Zechariah was here, and that appears to be, based on this, about the 22nd of October. What's interesting is we see the autumn equinox matches the timing for when we saw the Revelation 12 sign, in the heavens, where we saw in 2017, the 23rd of September 2017, we saw the sign of Betula, the Hebrew, the woman, or Virgo, whatever you want to call it. But we saw that sort of reference to the moon above her, the moon on her head, the crown of 12 stars, which are the planet alignment, the moon and the sun. All those alignments. Anyway, we see the birth of the child. It seems to indicate the equinox in that period of time. So, however that applies biblically, I don't know. But if it's valid, then it happened at this autumn equinox at this time here. So, it's quite interesting. So that we see that these dates, they line up, right? They line up in order with a cycle that kind of never ends, right? This cycle that continues and continues and continues. So we are able to get a little bit of an idea based on the Hebrew calendar as to roughly when Zechariah will be in the temple. We know it seems to be about the 22nd of October, the later part of October, that he's in the temple. Now, if that's the case, then he probably finished his service. Right, he probably finished his service maybe like the end of the month, so the start of the next month. Okay, or he finished it, at the end of October itself, which would have been a week into it. So it would have been around the 1st of November, somewhere around there. 1st, 2nd of November would have been when he kind of finished up roughly. So that's why breaking this down into a calendar like this, it gives us more information or something so we can better understand the story of Zechariah. And that's why it's given. It's given purely for this, but also to understand this division of the priests and how important this is. So these guys are leaders, they're elders. Okay, they're leaders in the service of the house of the Lord. So Hebrew calendar is generally 355 days divided into 24 lots, would be 14 days per service, meaning it would be 7 days twice through the year, potentially. Or it could potentially be just they served once, but it's 24 divisions. So we're expecting that, they do a week each, and that's sort of where it is. I also was able to dig a little bit more about the change between the shifts. It would have happened around midday based on some old Jewish understanding there. So, and here we see in 1 Chronicles 23:4, it says 24,000 of these shall have charge of the work in the house of the Lord. 6,000 shall be officers and judges. Okay, so what I've started to look at now is the ark being brought to Jerusalem, which happens before all of this part of the story. And we start to understand what happens here with the carrying of the ark and the Kohathites and so on and so on, and the different responsibilities that they were to have. So it might help in getting to the next step, which is the musicians, and starting to map that out. But that will be for another video, because obviously this is very time consuming and tedious, and I've probably thrown maybe 7 hours at it this morning just to get this far. So it's very time consuming, and as you do any of the genealogy stuff, because there's so many confusing parts of the text that you have to work through and try and understand it. So I hope this helps somebody, and hopes this encourages somebody, and that there's a lot here that's going to help lead us to a greater understanding of the temple, and a greater understanding of how God is setting up his kingdom, because that's really the big question we're asking here. So hope you enjoyed this, and have a wonderful day in Christ. God bless, and Maranatha.